When you're looking across Ontario, you see a range of reactions when it comes to community willingness to have renewable generation sited in their communities. When we work in Northern Ontario, that the demand is actually for more renewable generation to be sited in the north. When we look at Southern Ontario, I think where we see a distinction in terms of community acceptance is with respect to solar generation versus wind generation. Generally, we found that solar doesn't seem to create the same negative reactions, perhaps because it's obviously it's not as visible from a distance as we find obviously with major wind projects. I think part of the variation obviously depends on the developer, and some developers are very good at building that local community support, and that takes a lot of time and patience. I think we've seen some significant changes in the approach that's being taken over time, over the last decade, as we've learned more about how to build community acceptance. The procurement processes that the independent electricity system operator runs today are quite a bit different than in the early years of renewable generation, where there's a greater focus on community voice and the importance of community voice. Looking, of course, that the government is attempting to balance between seeking community support but not providing local communities with a veto power over matters which are matters of broad public policy about the future shape of our electricity system. When we think about the last decade, the opposition that we've seen is not surprising in light of the scope of the transformation that our electricity sector has undergone. We've seen 8,000 megawatts of renewable generation built in that decade, at the same time as we've been retiring our coal fleet and building a lot of gas-fired generation as well. And it's hardly surprising that given the scope of that build-out and given the fact that there's not a societal consensus around these issues about climate change policy, what is the appropriate premium to be paying for clean electricity versus dirtier forms of electricity. Without that social consensus, it can hardly be surprising that we're seeing some significant opposition.